and there was great trouble indoors. We only saw Harry and sometimes Dolly. I think she came for company, for Polly was always with Jerry, and he had to be kept very quiet. On the third day, while Harry was in the stable, a tap came at the door, and Governor Grant came in. "I wouldn't go to the house, my boy," he said, "but I want to know how your father is." "He is very bad," said Harry. "He can't be much worse. They call it bronchitis. The doctor thinks it will turn one way or another tonight." "That's very bad," said Grant, shaking his head. "I know 2 men who died of that last week. It takes 'em off in no time. But while there's life, there's hope, so you must keep up your spirits." "Yes," said Harry quickly, "and the doctor said that father had a better chance than most men because he didn't drink. He said yesterday the fever was so high that if father had been a drinking man, he would have burned up like a piece of paper. But I believe he thinks he will get over it. Don't you think he will, Mr. Grant?" The governor looked puzzled. "If there is any rule that good men should get over these things, I'm sure he will, my boy. He's the best man I know. I'll look in early tomorrow." Early next morning he was there. "Well?" said he. "Father is better," said Harry. "Mother hopes he will get over it." "Thank God," said the governor. "And now you must keep him warm and keep his mind easy, and that brings me to the horses. You see, Jack will be all the better for the rest of a week or 2 in a warm stable. But you can easily take him a turn up and down the street to stretch his legs. But this young one, if he does not get to work, he will soon be all on end, as you may say, and will be rather too much for you. And when he goes out, there'll be an accident." "It's like that now," said Harry. "I've kept him short on corn, but he's so full of spirit I don't know what to do with him." "Just so," said Grant. "Now look here. Will you tell your mother that if she is agreeable, I will come for him every day till something is arranged, and take him for a good spell of work, and whatever he earns, I will bring your mother half of it. And that will help with the horses' feed. Your father is in a good club, I know, but that won't keep the horses, and they'll be eating their heads off all this time. I'll come at noon and hear what she says," and without waiting for Harry's thanks, he was gone. At noon, I think he went and saw Polly, for he and Harry came to the stable together, harnessed Hotspur, and took him out. For a week or more he came for Hotspur, and when Harry thanked him or said anything about his kindness, he just laughed it off, saying it was all good luck for him, for his horses were wanting a little rest, which they would not otherwise have had. Jerry grew better steadily, but the doctor said that he must never go back to the cab work again if he wished to be an old man. The children had many consultations together about what father and mother would do, and how they could help to earn money. One afternoon Hotspur was brought in very wet and dirty. "The streets are nothing but slush," said the governor. "It will give you a good warming, my boy, to get him clean and dry." "All right, Governor," said Harry. "I shall not leave him till he is. You know I've been trained by my father." "I wish all the boys had been trained like you," said the governor. While Harry was sponging off the mud from Hotspur's body and legs, Dolly came in, looking very full of something. "Who lives at Fairstowe, Harry?" "Mother's got a letter from Fairstowe. She seemed so glad and ran upstairs to father with it." "Don't you know? Why, it is the name of Mrs. Fowler's place, mother's old mistress. You know, the lady that father met last summer, who sent you and me 5 shillings each?" "Oh, Mrs. Fowler, of course. I know all about her. I wonder what she's writing to mother about." "Mother wrote to her last week," said Harry. "You know, She told father if he ever gave up the cab work, she would like to know. I wonder what she says. Run in and see, Dolly. Harry scrubbed away at Hotspur with whoosh, whoosh, like an old hostler. In a few minutes, Dolly came dancing into the stable. Oh, Harry, there was never anything so beautiful. Mrs. Fowler says we're all to go and live near her. There's a cottage now empty that will just suit us, with a garden and a hen house and apple trees and everything. And her coachman is going away in the spring, and then she will want father in his place. There are good families round, where you can get a place in the garden, or the stable, or as a page boy, and there's a good school for me. And mother's laughing and crying by turns, and father looks so happy. Ah, that's uncommon jolly, said Harry, and just the right thing, I should say. It will suit father and mother both. But I don't intend to be a page boy with tight clothes and rows of buttons. I'll be a groom or a gardener. It was quickly settled that as soon as Jerry was well enough, they should remove to the country, and that the cab and horses should be sold as soon as possible. And that was heavy news for me, for I was not young now, and could not look for any improvement in my condition. Since I left Birtwick, I had never been so happy as with this dear master, Jerry. But 3 years of cab work, even under the best conditions, will tell on one's strength, and I felt I was not the horse that I had been. Grant said at once that he would take Hotspur, and there were men on the stand who would have bought me. But Jerry said I should not go to cab work again with just anybody, and the governor promised to find a place for me where I should be comfortable. The day came for going away. Jerry had not been allowed to go out yet, and I never saw him after that New Year's Eve. Polly and the children came to bid me good-bye. Poor old Jack, dear old Jack. I wish we could take you with us, she said, and then laying her hand on my mane, she put her face close to my neck and kissed me. Dolly was crying and kissed me too. Harry stroked me a great deal, but said nothing, only he seemed very sad. And so I was led away to my new place. I was sold to a corn dealer and baker, whom Jerry knew, and with him he thought I should have good food and fair work. In the first he was quite right, and if my master had always been on the premises, I do not think I should have been overloaded. But there was a foreman who was always hurrying and driving everyone, and frequently, when I had quite a full load, he would order something else to be taken on. My carter, whose name was Jakes, often said it was more than I ought to take, but the other always overruled him. 'Twas no use going twice, when once would do, and he chose to get business forward. Jakes, like the other carters, always had the bearing rein up, which prevented me from drawing easily, and by the time I had been there 3 or 4 months, I found the work telling very much on my strength. One day I was loaded more than usual, and part of the road was steep uphill. I used all my strength, but I could not get on, and was obliged continually to stop. This vexed my driver, and he laid his whip on badly. "Get on, you lazy fellow," he said, "or I'll make you." Again I started the heavy load and struggled on a few yards. Again the whip came down, and again I struggled forward. The pain of that great cart whip was sharp, but my mind was hurt quite as much as my poor sides. To be punished and abused when I was doing my very best was so hard it took the heart out of me. A third time he was flogging me cruelly when a lady stepped quickly up to him and said in a sweet, earnest voice, "Oh, I pray do not whip your good horse any more. I'm sure he's doing all he can, and the road is very steep. I'm sure he's doing his best." If doing his best won't get this load up, he must do more, something more than his best. That's all I know, madam, said Jakes. Is it not a very heavy load? She said. Yes, too heavy, he said, but that's not my fault. The foreman came just as we were starting, and would have 300 weight more put on to save him trouble, and I must get on with it as well as I can. And he was raising the whip again when the lady said, Pray, stop. I think I can help you if you will let me. And the man laughed. You see, she said, you do not give him a fair chance. He cannot use all his power with his head held back as it is in that bearing rein. If you would take it off, I am sure he would do better. Do try it, she said persuasively. I should be very glad if you would. Well, said Jakes with a short laugh. Anything to please a lady, of course. How far do you wish it down, madam? Quite down. Give him his head altogether. The rein was taken off, and in a moment I put my head down to my very knees. What a comfort it was! Then I tossed it up and down several times to get the aching stiffness out of my neck. Poor fellow, that's what you wanted, she said, patting and stroking me with her gentle hand. And now, if you will speak kindly to him and lead him on, I believe he will be able to do better. Jakes took the rein. Come on, Blackie. I put down my head and threw my whole weight against the collar. I spared no strength. I pulled the load steadily up the hill and then stopped to take breath. The lady had walked along the footpath and now came across into the road. She stroked and patted my neck, as I had not been patted for many a long day. You see, he was quite willing when you gave him the chance. I am sure he is a fine-tempered creature, and I dare say he has known better days. You don't put that rein on again, please. You won't put it on again, will you? For he was just going to hitch it up on the old plan. Well, madam, I can't deny that having his head has helped him up the hill, and I'll remember it another time, thank you, madam. But if he went on without a bearing rein, I should be the laughing-stock of all the carters. It's the fashion, you see. Is it not better, she said, to lead a good fashion than to follow a bad one? A great many gentlemen do not use bearing reins now. Our carriage horses have not worn them for 15 years, and work with much less fatigue than those who have them. Besides, she added in a very serious voice, we have no right to distress any of God's creatures without a very good reason. We call them dumb animals, and so they are, for they cannot tell us how they feel, but they do not suffer less because they have no words. But I must not detain you now. I thank you for trying my plan with your good horse, and I am sure you will find it far better than the whip. Good day. And with another soft pat on my neck, she stepped lightly across the path, and I saw her no more. Oh, that was a real lady, I'll be bound for it, said Jakes to himself. She spoke just as polite as if I was a gentleman, and I'll try her plan uphill at any rate, and I must do him justice to say that he let my rein out several holes, and going uphill after that he always gave my head. But the heavy loads went on. Good feed and fair rest will keep one's strength under full work, but no horse can stand against overloading. And I was getting so thoroughly pulled down from this cause that a younger horse was brought in my place. I may as well mention here what I suffered at this time from another cause. I had heard horses speak of it, but had never myself had the experience of that evil. This was a badly lighted stable. There was only one very small window at the end, and the consequence was that the stalls were almost dark. Besides the depressing effect this had on my spirits, it very much weakened my sight, and when I was suddenly brought out of the darkness into the glare of daylight, it was very painful to my eyes. Several times I stumbled over the threshold, and could scarcely see where I was going. I believe, had I stayed there very long, I should have become purblind. That would have been a great misfortune, for I have heard men say that a stone-blind horse was safer to drive than one who had imperfect sight, as it generally makes them very timid. However, I escaped without any permanent injury to my sight and was sold to a large cab owner. I shall never forget my new master. He had black eyes and a hooked nose. His mouth was as full of teeth as a bulldog's, and his voice was as harsh as a grinding of cartwheels over gravel-stones. His name was Nicholas Skinner, and I believe he was the same man that poor seedy Sam drove for. I've heard men say that seeing is believing, but I should say that feeling is believing, for as much as I have seen before, I never knew till now the utter misery of a cab horse's life. Skinner had a low set of cabs and a low set of drivers. He was hard on his men, and the men were hard on the horses. In this place we had no Sunday rest, and it was the heat of summer. Sometimes, on a Sunday morning, a party of fast men would hire the cab for the day, 4 of them inside, another with the driver, and I had to take them 10 or 15 miles out into the country and back again. Never would any of them get down to walk up a hill, let it be ever so steep, or the day ever so hot, unless, indeed, when the driver was afraid I should not manage it, and sometimes I was so fevered and worn that I could hardly touch my food. How I used to long for the nice bran mash with niter in it that Jerry used to give us on Saturday nights, in hot weather that used to cool us down and make us so comfortable. Then we had 2 nights and a whole day for unbroken rest, and on Monday morning we were as fresh as a young horse again. But here there was no rest, and my driver was just as hard as his master. He had a cruel whip, with something so sharp at the end that it sometimes drew blood, and he would even whip me under the belly and flip the lash out at my head. Indignities like these took the heart out of me terribly, but still, I did my best and never hung back, for as poor Ginger said, it was no use. Men are the strongest. My life was now so utterly wretched that I wished I might, like Ginger, drop dead at my work and be out of my misery. And one day my wish very nearly came to pass. I went on the stand at 8 in the morning, and had done a good share of work when we had to take a fare to the railway. A long train was just expected in, so my driver pulled up at the back of some of the outside cabs to take the chance of a return fare. It was a very heavy train, and as all the cabs were soon engaged, ours was called for. There was a party of 4, a noisy, blusterous man with a little lady and a little boy and a young girl, and a great deal of luggage. The lady and the boy got into the cab while the man ordered about the luggage, and the young girl came and looked at me. "Papa," she said, "I am sure this poor horse cannot take us and all our luggage so far. He's so very weak and worn out. Do look at him." "Oh, he's all right, miss," said my driver. "He's strong enough." The porter, who was pulling about some heavy boxes, suggested to the gentleman that, as there was so much luggage, whether he would not take a second cab. "Can your horse do it, or can't he?" said the blustering man. "Oh, he can do it all right, sir. Send up the boxes, porter. He can take more than that." And he helped to haul up a box so heavy that I could feel the springs go down. "Papa, Papa, do take a second cab," said the young girl in a beseeching tone. "I'm sure we are wrong. I'm sure it is very cruel." "Nonsense, Grace. Get in at once, and don't make all this fuss. A pretty thing it would be if a man of business had to examine every cab horse before he hired it. The man knows his own business, of course. There, get in, and hold your tongue." The gentle friend had to obey, and the box after box was dragged up and lodged on the top of the cab, or settled by the side of the driver.